Captain Daniel Carter stood at the center of the command deck, his hands resting firmly on the console as he stared at the shimmering holographic map of the solar system. The Valar Dominion's fleet had appeared at the edge of the system only days ago, dark shapes moving like predators through the void. For generations, humanity had heard stories of alien empires in the stars, but this was the first time one had come to their doorstep. The Valar did not come to talk or share knowledge. They came to conquer. The message had been broadcast across every channel, their deep, cold voices echoing in a dozen languages. They declared themselves the Alpha of the galaxy, the first and the last rulers, and demanded Earth's complete surrender. The choice was simple: enslavement or annihilation. On other worlds, the Valar had been met with fear, silence, and finally submission. They expected the same here. But on Earth, the message stirred something different. It was not fear that spread through the people. It was defiance. Maria Brooks, a tactical officer assigned to the flagship, stood near Daniel with a calm expression, though her heart beat faster than she cared to admit. She had studied every bit of information they had on the Valar, their history of conquest, their overwhelming fleets, their cruel treatment of those who resisted. She knew the odds were stacked against humanity, yet when she looked around the command deck, she did not see despair. She saw determination. Jason Clark, one of the engineers responsible for weapons development, leaned against the console with tired eyes. He had not slept in almost 2 days, working non-stop to modify Earth's defensive systems. Jason was not a soldier, but he understood better than most what they were facing. The Valar did not simply fight wars. They erased civilizations. To them, humanity was just another target, another name to add to a long list of extinct species. But Jason was not ready to let humanity become a memory. Not yet. When the Valar fleet made their first move, it was not against Earth itself, but against the Mars colonies. They wanted to show their strength, to remind humanity what awaited them if they resisted. The colonies were smaller, with fewer defenses, and the Valar thought it would be an easy victory. They were wrong. Railgun platforms hidden on the Martian surface came online, firing bursts of metal slugs that cut through Valar warships. Drones swarmed like angry hornets, striking from angles the Valar did not expect. For the first time in their history, the Valar felt real resistance in the opening hours of a war. Daniel stood silent as reports filled the air. 2 Valar destroyers destroyed. Enemy cruisers retreating to regroup. The voices of his officers were steady, but there was an undertone of disbelief. They had not expected to survive the first assault, let alone strike back so effectively. Humanity had prepared in silence for decades, building weapons not just for defense, but for survival. Every lesson from Earth's long history of war had been studied, reshaped, and adapted for the stars. Now those lessons were being put to use. Commander Linda Parker's voice came through the comms, sharp and unwavering. She was leading a fleet stationed near the asteroid belt, and her ships had just ambushed a Valar squadron. The Valar had laughed when they first encountered human tactics. They could not understand the unpredictability, the willingness to take risks that no other species dared, but laughter turned to silence as more of their ships burned in the cold void. In underground bunkers on Earth, scientists worked day and night. Kevin Ross was one of them, a researcher turned strategist. His hands trembled as he pored over Valar technology that had been intercepted. The alien systems were advanced, but Kevin's mind worked quickly, finding flaws, small cracks that could be turned into weaknesses. Every scrap of knowledge became a weapon, every discovery a tool for survival. He knew the Valar saw themselves as gods, untouchable, unchallenged. But gods could bleed. On the streets of Earth, civilians gathered in silence as the Valar message replayed: submit or face extinction. Families held hands, soldiers boarded transports, and workers carried supplies to ships being readied for battle. There was fear, yes, but it was buried under something deeper. Humanity had faced wars, disasters, and near collapse before. Always they had endured. Now, with the stars watching, they would endure again. Daniel Carter knew what was coming. The Valar would not back down after their first losses. They would bring more ships, more firepower, more death. He could almost feel the storm building on the horizon. But he also knew that humanity had something the Valar had never faced: unity born of desperation and a refusal to kneel. He turned to his crew, his voice steady. They call themselves Alpha. he said quietly, though every person on the deck heard him. They believe they rule everything. But they don't know us. We don't break. We don't bow. If they want to test us, then let them come. We will show them what it means to fight humanity. The room was silent for a heartbeat, then filled with a low murmur of agreement. No grand speeches were needed. The people there already understood. They were fighting not just for Earth, not just for survival, but for the right to exist as free beings. For the first time, an enemy that had crushed entire civilizations would face a world that refused to surrender. Far beyond the system, the Valar warlords gathered around their own command screens. They sneered at the reports of their losses, calling them meaningless setbacks. To them, humanity was just another prey animal thrashing before the inevitable. They did not understand what was truly happening. They did not see that they had awakened something dangerous. The war had just begun and humanity was ready. The Valar Dominion had not known defeat for hundreds of years. Their fleets were built to crush worlds, their soldiers trained to kill without mercy, and their leaders believed themselves unchallenged rulers of the stars. But now, after their first clash with humanity, there was doubt among them. Entire squadrons had been destroyed at Mars, and the humans had shown an ability the Valar had not expected. They could fight back. In orbit around Earth, Captain Daniel Carter walked slowly across the command deck of his ship. Reports poured in from all sides, and he listened with quiet focus. The Valar were regrouping after their losses, and new fleets were already entering the system. Humanity had bought itself time, but time alone would not be enough. Daniel knew the next wave would be far stronger than the first. He knew the Valar would come with fury. Maria Brooke studied the holographic map, her eyes fixed on the patterns of enemy movement. The Valar always attacked in predictable formations, believing their superior firepower made strategy unnecessary. But humans had always thrived on the unexpected. Maria spoke quietly to Daniel. They underestimate us again. They don't believe we can strike first? Daniel nodded. Then we will prove them wrong. In the asteroid belt, Commander Linda Parker had already begun her preparations. Her ships were smaller and faster than the Valar cruisers, and she knew that speed and surprise were humanity's best weapons. She moved her fleet into hidden positions among the rocks, waiting like predators in the shadows. The Valar would not expect an ambush from prey they thought broken. Meanwhile, Jason Clark worked inside a weapons bay on Earth's orbital station. His hands were covered in grease and burns, but he did not stop. He and his team were building modifications to energy cannons, trying to increase their power beyond safe levels. It was dangerous, but there was no time to be careful. Jason's voice was hoarse from hours of work. If we don't push these systems to the limit, we're already dead. His team kept working, driven by the same thought. On Earth itself, Kevin Ross sat in a dark laboratory, staring at streams of alien code on a screen. He had cracked into fragments of Valar communication during their last battle. It was complex and filled with strange patterns, but Kevin was sure he could use it against them. If he could turn their own systems into weaknesses, then humanity would have a chance. His hands trembled, but not from fear. They trembled from focus, from the weight of knowing that what he discovered could change everything. The Valar returned in force. Dozens of warships entered the system, their black hulls glowing under the light of the sun. Their voices echoed across human channels once again. You resist without reason. You are prey, and prey cannot escape hunters. Submit now, or all will burn. The words were calm, almost cold, but to humanity they were fuel. Across Earth, people prepared for war. Factories turned out weapons and ships. Civilians carried supplies, dug bunkers, and volunteered for service. Fear was there, but it lived side by side with determination. Humanity had been tested many times in history. Every time they had adapted. Every time they had fought back. Now they were ready to do so again. The Valar began their assault on the asteroid belt, believing it would be easy to clear before striking deeper into the system. What they did not know was that Linda Parker was already waiting. Her fleet moved from the shadows, engines flaring as they struck without warning. Valar cruisers were hit from the sides, their shields burning as railgun fire tore into them. Drones hidden among the rocks swarmed forward, crashing into enemy hulls with explosives. The Valar roared in anger as their ships burned, their formations shattered. Linda's voice was calm over the comms. Keep pressure on their flanks. Don't give them time to regroup. Her officers obeyed. their voices steady even as the battle raged around them. Human ships darted in and out of the asteroid fields, using the terrain to their advantage. The Velar fired blindly into the rocks, destroying asteroids but missing their true targets. They had never fought an enemy willing to risk everything for victory. Back near Earth, Jason Clark's new weapons were finally tested. When the Velar sent smaller squadrons toward the planet, Earth's defense platforms opened fire with energy beams that burned hotter and sharper than ever before. Velar shields cracked and their ships were torn apart. Jason watched from a monitor, his face pale but his eyes bright. "It works," he whispered. "It really works." In the command deck, Daniel Carter received the reports one after another. Velar destroyers destroyed. Human fleets holding. Casualties, yes, but survival too. Every victory, no matter how small, built a new kind of hope. For the first time in history, the Velar were not just fighting a weak prey. They were fighting predators. Kevin Ross sent a message to Daniel. His voice was excited, almost breathless. "Captain, I think I've found something. They're command codes. I can't break them fully yet, but I can disrupt them. Maybe even turn some of their systems against them." Daniel's voice was steady. "Do it. Whatever it takes." The Velar, frustrated by their losses, launched a direct attack toward Mars once again. They wanted to make an example, to break human morale. But this time, humanity was ready. Fleets moved into position, guided by Maria's careful planning. The Velar came in strong, but they walked straight into a trap. Human ships circled them, hitting from all sides. For hours, the battle raged across the skies above Mars, and when it ended, the Velar had lost another fleet. On their command ships, Velar warlords growled in disbelief. Never before had Prey fought like this. Never before had Prey drawn blood from the Alpha. Their arrogance had blinded them, but now even they could see the truth. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was dangerous. When the battles were over and the wreckage of Velar ships floated in silence, Daniel Carter stood once again at the command deck. His crew looked tired, their faces lined with exhaustion, but their eyes were alive with fire. He spoke quietly, not needing to raise his voice. "They thought they could break us. They thought they could rule us. But today we showed them who we are." No one cheered, but the silence was heavy with meaning. Humanity was no longer just defending itself. Humanity was winning. The Velar had claimed to be Alpha, but now they were learning a truth they had never wanted to face. Earth would not bow. Humanity would not kneel. The war was far from over, but for the first time the Velar knew fear. The Velar Dominion was furious. Every report that came from the front lines made them more desperate. Their fleets, once unstoppable, had been broken. Their soldiers, trained for centuries to intimidate and kill, were being destroyed by humans who refused to submit. The Velar did not understand humanity. They had never encountered a species that fought with such reckless determination. On Earth, Captain Daniel Carter walked across the bridge of the flagship. His mind moved quickly, processing reports from the ongoing battles. Even as the Velar attacked Mars again, humans had learned to defend, strike, and retreat in ways that the aliens could not predict. Daniel knew the war was far from over. The Velar would not surrender, and humanity could not afford to lose. Maria Brooks, tactical officer, was already planning the next move. Her hands traced patterns on the holographic map, plotting possible Velar strategies and finding weaknesses. She had studied the enemy and knew that their pride could be used against them. "They always expect submission," she said. "They never prepare for resistance like this." Jason Clark, the engineer, was deep in the weapons lab, testing new energy cannons and drones. Each device was meant to exploit what they had learned about the Velar. The weapons were dangerous and unstable, but in war, they had no choice. "If these work, we can hold them off for weeks," he muttered, his eyes fixed on a monitor showing simulations of Velar attacks. Meanwhile, Kevin Ross worked tirelessly on electronic warfare. He had found a way to interfere with Velar communications. By sending specific signals, he could confuse their ships, make them attack one another, or even shut down their systems temporarily. Kevin's work was slow and painstaking, but every small victory brought hope to humanity. Every Velar ship destroyed was proof that the human mind could match the alien technology. On the battlefield, the Velar attacked human colonies in the outer system. They hoped to demoralize humans and show their dominance, but humans did not break. Civilians on space stations and colonies were organized, ready with weapons, shields, and supplies. They fought alongside soldiers, their courage as vital as the fleets in orbit. Nathan Brooks, Maria's younger brother, led a group of volunteers in a small outpost near the asteroid belt. They had no hope of surviving alone, but they knew their resistance would save lives elsewhere. Every strike, every defensive maneuver slowed the Velar advance. The Velar underestimated the human predator instinct. For generations, humans had survived wars, disasters, and starvation. They had learned to adapt, to improvise, and to fight with whatever they had. The Velar had never seen prey that could strike so effectively. They had expected fear and submission, but instead they faced rage and clever strategy. Captain Daniel Carter ordered a series of counterattacks. Human fleets, smaller but faster and more agile, struck at Velar supply lines. Convoys carrying food, weapons, and energy were ambushed and destroyed. The Velar fleets could not predict the human strategies. Every victory boosted human morale, and every loss the Velar suffered weakened their confidence. Commander Linda Parker directed a daring raid on a Velar outpost near Saturn. Using asteroid cover and stealth technology, her fleet disabled communications and destroyed defensive installations before the Velar could react. The Velar responded with brutal force, but they were already fighting on too many fronts. Linda's ship slipped away before being caught, leaving the Velar commanders frustrated and enraged. On Earth, Jason Clark's modified weapons were deployed. Energy cannons fired beams that could pierce Velar shields, while drones exploded inside enemy hulls. Kevin Ross sent interference signals, turning some Velar ships against others. The results were devastating. Entire squadrons of Velar ships were destroyed in minutes. Humanity had discovered the power of combining brains and bravery, strategy and technology, to overcome an enemy that seemed invincible. Despite the victories, humanity paid a cost. Ships were lost and lives were sacrificed, but the survivors learned and adapted. Each loss became a lesson, each battle a training ground for the next. Captain Daniel Carter addressed his crew after one such battle. "We have won today, but tomorrow brings new challenges. Do not fear them. Face them as we have faced all dangers before, together." The Velar leaders were growing desperate. Their arrogance was gone, replaced by fear. They had underestimated humans, and now their fleets were weakening. Yet they refused to surrender. Every new attack became more violent, more dangerous. They sought to destroy everything in their path, hoping to intimidate humanity into obedience. But humanity did not yield. On the human side, civilians and soldiers alike began to see that they were no longer defending. They were fighting for survival, yes, but they were also fighting to prove that humanity would not be ruled. Their courage inspired others, and even in the darkest hours, the human spirit shone brightly. Captain Daniel Carter, Maria Brooks, Jason Clark, and Kevin Ross became symbols of resistance. Their names whispered with respect and hope. The Velar sent their most advanced ships, hoping to break human lines once and for all. The battle that followed lasted for hours, stretching across space. Human fleets moved in coordination, striking with precision. Ships destroyed, drones deployed, and interference signals sent confusion into Velar ranks. The humans adapted to every move, learned from every strike, and pressed on relentlessly. At the climax of the battle, Nathan Brooks led a team to disable a Velar command ship. They infiltrated the enemy vessel, planting explosives and gathering critical intelligence. Their bravery turned the tide. The command ship was destroyed, and the Velar fleet, leaderless and confused, began to retreat. Humanity had not only survived, but had struck a decisive blow against the so-called Alpha species. Captain Daniel Carter watched the retreating Velar ships on his viewscreen. He felt a mix of relief and determination. The Velar had claimed to be Alpha, but humanity had proven that courage, unity, and intelligence could defeat even the most powerful enemy. The war was not over, but humanity had taken its first true steps toward victory. On Earth, people celebrated small victories but remained focused on preparation. They knew the Velar would return, stronger and more determined. Yet they also knew that the humans who fought alongside soldiers, scientists, and engineers had shown a strength that no alien empire had ever seen. Humanity's predator instinct was alive, and the galaxy would soon learn that Earth was not a world to be conquered. The Velar Dominion, humiliated by repeated losses, decided to escalate. They were the Alpha species they had claimed, and no prey could survive against them for long. But humanity had proven otherwise. Captain Daniel Carter knew that the next wave would be their most dangerous yet. Every ship, every strategy, every human effort would be tested to its limit. Commander Linda Parker prepared her fleet in the outer orbit of Jupiter. The ships were ready, armed, and strategically placed. The Valar would come with full force, and Linda intended to meet them with every advantage they could gain. Her voice on the comms was calm but firm. "Remember, they expect us to be afraid. Show them that humanity does not fear." Maria Brooks studied the enemy movement patterns on the holographic map. The Valar had shifted their formation to surround the solar system, a tactic meant to crush human defenses from every direction. But Maria's mind worked quickly, seeing possibilities the Valar could not imagine. She plotted routes for intercepts, ambushes, and counterattacks. Every move had been calculated to hit the enemy where it hurt most. On Earth, Jason Clark oversaw the final tests of experimental weapons. Energy cannons, modified drones, and automated missile systems were all ready. The devices were dangerous, sometimes volatile, but they were humanity's best hope. Jason worked tirelessly, knowing that the smallest error could cost lives. "We can't afford mistakes," he muttered to his team, eyes never leaving the monitors. Kevin Ross had refined his electronic warfare programs. By now he could disrupt Valar communications for limited periods, cause false readings, and even interfere with navigation systems. Each hack was a temporary advantage, but in the chaos of battle, temporary could mean decisive. Kevin transmitted his plans to Daniel. "We can hit them from every side. If timed right, their formation will collapse." The Valar fleet entered the solar system like a shadow across the stars. Their enormous warships blocked sunlight, and their weapons were ready to fire. They were confident, believing that humanity's resistance was no match for their might. But they underestimated what human strategy and determination could achieve. The first strikes came near Saturn. Linda Parker's fleet leaped from hidden positions, hitting Valar cruisers before they could respond. Energy beams struck hulls and drones swarmed inside, detonating with devastating effect. Valar shields failed against the human assault. The aliens were shocked. No species had ever attacked them with such intelligence and aggression. Daniel Carter coordinated attacks from Earth's fleet. Smaller ships darted around larger Valar vessels, striking weak points and drawing fire away from vital installations. Every human fleet movement was designed to confuse, divide, and weaken the enemy. Valar ships collided and fired upon each other, victims of Kevin Ross's interference signals. Chaos spread through the once perfect Valar formation. On Mars, Nathan Brooks led another team in a surprise raid. They struck supply lines, destroyed weapons caches, and captured critical technology. Each action not only damaged the Valar, but also gave humans valuable intelligence. Nathan and his team worked quietly and efficiently, aware that every moment counted. Their courage inspired other units across the system, giving hope to those who watched from afar. Jason Clark's new energy cannons were deployed on orbital platforms. Beams of concentrated energy sliced through Valar shields, destroying cruisers in minutes. The Valar had no time to adjust, their formations breaking apart under relentless human assault. Engineers like Jason were the hidden heroes of the war, their inventions turning the tide in ways the Valar could not comprehend. Meanwhile, Kevin Ross launched his most complex signal. A Valar command ship, responsible for coordinating attacks across the outer system, began transmitting false orders. Valar ships moved in confusion, striking each other and retreating in panic. The humans had turned the enemy's own systems against them, and the effect was catastrophic. Ships meant to enforce dominance became instruments of destruction for the humans themselves. As the battle raged across the solar system, Captain Daniel Carter issued precise commands. Human ships adapted in real time, striking weak points, covering retreating allies, and exploiting every advantage. The Valar had believed in invincibility, but human adaptability and courage proved overwhelming. Each loss the Valar suffered added to their confusion, and humanity gained strength with every success. The climax of the battle came near the asteroid belt. Linda Parker's fleet led a decisive strike against the Valar flagship. Using advanced maneuvers, they approached undetected, striking critical systems with drones and missiles. Explosions rocked the massive vessel, and the Valar command structure collapsed. With the flagship destroyed, Valar ships scattered, leaderless and vulnerable. Captain Daniel Carter watched the outcome from Earth's command deck. His crew was exhausted, but their eyes burned with determination. The humans had won a major victory, but the war was far from over. The Valar would recover, regroup, and strike again. Yet humanity had proven its strength. They had shown that even the Alpha could be challenged and defeated with courage, intelligence, and unity. On Earth, people celebrated cautiously, knowing that the next battle would demand even more of them. But they also understood that a new chapter had begun. Humanity was no longer prey. Humanity had revealed its predator instinct, and the galaxy would never forget that lesson. The Valar, once confident and cruel, had been reminded that survival was never guaranteed, even for the so-called Alpha species. And in that reminder lay the promise of human victory. The Valar Dominion was broken but not yet defeated. Their fleets were shattered, their leaders humiliated, and their arrogance shaken. Yet they still hoped to survive, to regroup and to reclaim control. Captain Daniel Carter knew that if humanity wanted to end the threat once and for all, they had to act decisively. On the command deck of the flagship, Daniel studied the Velar movements. Remaining enemy ships were scattered across the system, disorganized and vulnerable. Humanity had learned their tactics, their weaknesses, and their arrogance. Daniel spoke to his crew, his voice calm but firm. "This is our chance to finish it. We will strike at their homeworld. If we do not, they will recover and come back stronger. We must end this war now." Maria Brooks plotted the fleet's path to the Valar home system. The journey would be long and dangerous, but she had calculated the fastest and safest routes. Every step had been planned, every possible enemy move considered. Her fingers traced the holographic map, highlighting points where ambushes could be set and supply lines disrupted. "We hit them fast and hard," she said. No mercy, no hesitation. Jason Clark and his team prepared the most advanced weapons ever built by humanity. Energy cannons capable of piercing the thickest shields, drones designed to infiltrate and destroy, and automated systems ready to adapt to changing battle conditions. Every device was a product of human ingenuity and determination. Jason checked each system repeatedly, ensuring nothing would fail. "We cannot afford a mistake," he said quietly. "One error could cost everything." Kevin Ross finalized electronic warfare programs that could disrupt the Valar's remaining communication networks. By sending interference signals, he could cause confusion, force enemy ships to attack each other, and even disable key defense systems. Kevin worked tirelessly, aware that his efforts could decide the fate of the war. "If this works, we can end them," he said to Daniel over the comms. As humanity's fleet entered Valar space, the aliens were caught off guard. The remaining warships tried to mount a defense, but without central command, their efforts were chaotic. Human ships struck with precision, targeting weak points and exploiting every vulnerability. The Valar were powerful, but they were no longer coordinated, no longer capable of overwhelming the humans who now acted as a single, determined unit. The battle reached the Valar homeworld. Orbiting satellites and defensive installations opened fire, but human ships avoided them with careful maneuvers. Drones and energy weapons disabled key defenses, clearing a path for the main fleet. Daniel Carter watched as the plan unfolded perfectly. Every strike was calculated, every move anticipated, and every success brought them closer to victory. On the planet's surface, explosions rocked the Valar cities. Human orbital bombardments were precise, targeting military centers and command hubs while minimizing damage to non-combat zones as much as possible. The Valar tried to respond, but chaos reigned. Their ships in orbit were being destroyed, their defenses crippled, and their people terrified. The Alpha species was facing extinction at the hands of humans they had once believed inferior. Nathan Brooks led a team of elite soldiers in a daring strike on the main command facility. They infiltrated enemy defenses, planting explosives and gathering intelligence. Each step was dangerous, each moment filled with the risk of death. Yet they moved with courage, driven by the knowledge that failure meant the survival of a cruel, arrogant species that had tried to enslave humanity. Kevin Ross sent the final interference signals. Valar warships began to attack each other, turning their power against themselves. Entire fleets were destroyed from within, their own technology becoming their downfall. Humanity had not only defeated the enemy in combat, but had also used intelligence and strategy to turn the tide completely. As the last of the Valar fleets fell, Daniel Carter sent a message to the remaining leaders. "You called yourselves Alpha. You believed no one could challenge you. Now you see the truth. Predators do not rule forever." The message was simple yet powerful. There was no negotiation, no compromise. The time for mercy had passed. With the Valar leadership incapacitated, humanity completed the final strikes. Orbital weapons destroyed key installations, and ground forces secured any remaining enemy positions. The Valar species was erased from existence, their arrogance and cruelty extinguished. The galaxy would remember this as the moment humans had proven themselves not just survivors, but predators in their own right. Back on Earth, people celebrated the victory, but they also mourned the cost. Many ships had been lost and lives had been sacrificed, yet humanity had endured, survived, and prevailed. Captain Daniel Carter, Maria Brooks, Jason Clark, Kevin Ross, and countless unnamed soldiers and civilians had shown that courage, intelligence, and unity could overcome even the greatest of threats. The message of human strength spread through the stars. Other species who had watched the conflict from afar understood a new truth. Earth was not a world to be conquered. Humanity had proven its resolve, and the galaxy would never again underestimate the people who refused to bow, refused to kneel, and refused to be prey. The Valar had claimed Alpha, but humanity had erased them from existence. The galaxy now knew who the true predators were.